Hello, Create Schools. Today we're going to talk about, could the treaties be justified at the time? So go ahead and get your paper and pen out and write this title down, and then come to the next slide when you're ready. Okay, so the first thing we want to talk about, was the treaty too harsh? So we need to think about, first of all, you remember, Germany had no representation. Germany was not there when the treaty was written. Germany felt that they had not lost the war. The war was stopped, and they said, we're not going to fight anymore. And Germany had not actually lost. And so they felt that they should have to be able to say in what the outcomes were. And Germany also had to accept responsibility for the war, and they had believed that, it's not just their fault. They are not the only ones fighting. It's just they shouldn't have to accept full responsibility. But in the War Without clause, they are saying that they were accepting full responsibility for the war. And also, many people thought that the reparations was unreasonable, that it was too high, that it would cripple Germany. So if you can see down there in that political cartoon, there's the peace treaty, and that's symbolizing that the treaty, that Germany would be crippled. That's why he's hobbling out there on those crutches, and that it's unfair and way too harsh for Germany. Okay, take these notes down if you haven't already, and I'll move on to the next slide when you're ready. Okay, the next, people say it wasn't too harsh. So Germany, before World War I, had fought in a war against Russia, and they had made a treaty called the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk in 1917. You don't need to worry about how to pronounce that, but do make sure you know how to write it, because it is actually one of the best examples of why the treaty wasn't too harsh. In this treaty, Germany really was very, very harsh to Russia, very high reparations, very lots of things. And because Germany had given such a harsh treaty to Russia, it made the big three felt justified. Well, if Germany can do it to Russia, we can do it to Germany. So think about that if you are ever punishing or having to do something, that someday it might turn around and bite you in the bottom. So the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk in 1917 is one of the best reasons to use why the treaty was not too harsh. Also, many historians do give Germany the primary responsibility for it. So that is a little bit of hindsight, but at the time, we do believe actually, and they believed actually, that Germany was the primary responsibility. If you follow the events about how World War I started, then it is definitely Germany's main fault. Also, the main countries, the big three and the other big ones, did have self-determination. They were able to choose for the rights for their countries and their thing. And so since each country was looking at themselves, that was basically, they all got what their country needed. Okay? So some of the colonies, no, they did not get self-determination. But that's one of the reasons why Wilson wasn't happy. But the big three countries and also the other major players did get basically what they felt they deserve. Okay, pause here and go ahead and take these notes down. And oh, sorry, didn't tell you about this cartoon here. Here's the Allies, that would be the big three, pushing Germany into the water. Basically, they're making him take a dive into, like walking the plank, for signing the Treaty of Versailles. Just push him in, basically kill them. But wasn't too harsh, so hopefully he can swim. Okay, next slide. Okay, so then hindsight is 2020. We just discussed 2020 earlier. It means you have perfect vision. It's the way in America that we test our vision. So hindsight is looking behind you. And so what your opinion in the looking back is very different, or could be very different, of your opinion at what's going on at the time. If you think that's true for yourself as well, things that you do currently right now, you hopefully making the best decisions you can. But if you look back in the past and think, ooh, maybe that wasn't a really great idea. That's your difference between hindsight, looking back, and what you thought right then. So, hindsight, treaties were not fair as Germany could not cope with the demands of the Big Three. Okay, so now we know, or now historians believe, that it wasn't fair because it was just way too much. And it was unreasonable and caused the Second World War. Historians generally believe it was a 20-year break, not a peace, between one long war. That, now it's the Second World War happened because of the First World War and the Treaty of Versailles. Okay, then other people say, okay, actually, if we would have totally destroyed Germany, then it would have prevented a Second World War. So remember, Clemenceau totally wanted to cripple Germany, destroy Germany, and he probably would have been happy if they would have just torn Germany up in parts and had 3 or 4 or 5 different countries, and then it would have been very hard for them to start a Second World War if basically a person could not bring them all together. So do keep in mind when you are answering a question, these are hindsight questions or hindsight statements. So if they ask for how was it seen at the time, you should not be saying that it caused the Second World War, because at the time they did not know that. Okay, so be very careful that you read the question and know what it's saying. Okay, if you have any questions, let me know.